how to balance performance and brand, which is a fascinating topic if you really think about it, because uh, brand drives the most demand. Like, I don't know what else to say. And so when people think about brand and performance, there's like these pie charts about people, about how they model it. Some people are running 100% performance. Some people are running, I think the common mix is sort of like 80% performance, 20% brand, or whatever you would read in a marketing book. And in more like traditional B2C books, they would call it brand and activation. And activation would be 40 to 60%, and brand would be the other half of the pie. Um, and for for me, I think the starting point is how it's defined. And so I think the way, and I'm going to set my definitions up front, because I don't think that my definitions are the same as how everyone else sees it. And so for brand, like, we're running brand executions and measuring, um, understanding what their impact is on demo requests, but not measuring it solely against that outcome. And so it comes down to how you measure it, in my view. Like in performance, it's going to be cost per action. I'm going to give you something, and then I'm going to measure how many people do whatever I desire to do. And on brand, I find it to be more organic, multiple uses, different things like that. And so the balance ends up striking, to me, the balance ends up striking based on how your metrics are set at the top. If your metrics are based on MQLs, you are going to run, and it's a high volume of MQLs, and you define it like most companies do, which is basically contact information that might be able to firmographically fit into your ICP somehow, that didn't take a lot of actual buying activity actions. That's how most people will define it. If that's the case, and it's a heavy volume, you're going to run a lot of performance, because that's the only way to get there. And if you have different metrics like revenue, cost per SQO, things that are later funnel, I find that you tend to lean a lot more on the quote unquote brand side, meaning that you wouldn't be doing a brand activity if you didn't think that it impacted revenue. You just don't, you recognize that you may not be able to measure it at that specific level of detail. And we'll get into some stuff, because we're figuring out some really awesome stuff later about how we're able to measure brand executions on an Instagram story ad, and how that influences view through later desktop conversions. And I know that those impressions matter a lot, both on click and view through. And so that's kind of, I'm not sure I'm giving everyone like an awesome answer here, because I think it's really dependent, but it ultimately comes down to how it's the metrics that are set. So what would you balance? Like, I'll give you an example of how we balance it for a company today. $40 million ARR SaaS. When we started, their media budget was 100% performance to ebook downloads. $120,000 a month to ebook downloads on Google and LinkedIn. And that's not that much different than what most SaaS companies are doing of that size and that media spend. And now, so that's 100% performance, 0% brand on the media spend. Right now, we spend about 98%, I would classify as brand, and 2% on performance, because they have some webinars, they have some virtual events, they did a ebook that they wanted to run some promotions so they could run those things, and whatever it is, $5K a month is set aside to do those things. And the other $115K is running what I consider brand, which is, we are doing these things to educate buyers. We are measuring it, and the best we can, to know that it's driving a business impact, but we are not looking for the direct response attribution and channel attribution to the revenue in Salesforce. We are doing it to move people through a buying cycle, which becomes very important in a B2B, complex B2B situation. And when we've made those changes over the past 9 months, their SQOs have gone up almost 300%. And so, not to say that just how the media is allocated or just how it's measured, there's a lot of different pieces of the formula. What you're putting in, how good the content is, how it's formatted, how you're optimized for mobile versus desktop, how the channels are getting broken out, how you're measuring those things, how the feedback loop is happening. This is where momentum comes into play that I keep talking about. Is like that all didn't happen in month one. When you have a team of 15, 20, 30 people and trying to get all those different pieces moving in the right way, that stuff takes time. But over a 6-month period, being able to move the bar from 300K ARR a month in net new qualified pipeline to 2 million a month, and then you stack that over and over and you continue to build on that, that's a meaningful movement by essentially changing the way that you measure marketing. And so I'll pause there. Maybe there's some thoughts. Maybe that sparked a couple questions to the chat blowing up. Otherwise, I will segue directly into kind of like part 2 here, which is how we've started to figure out how to at least have a sense on our brand executions of what it's meaning from at a performance level. It's starting to get really confusing with the terminology here, but would love to share that unless we have any questions that have come through.
Well, Damien and what he submitted asked, what is a reasonable expectation for performance marketing in terms of time to see results? And so just kind of expanding on what you just said.
Yeah, again, so the definition for me of performance marketing is I am doing something and expecting that outcome right now. And so that is going to drive some type of conversion action. I want you to submit this form. I want you to download this ebook. I want you to call this number. Whatever that activation step is, that's how you measure the success of that thing. The thing with performance marketing, if you're doing it in a product-led, user acquisition focused model, like it works. If you're doing it in 100K ACV, like enterprise SaaS play with a sales motion behind it, what you're going to do is create a lot of short-term top of funnel metrics that don't actually materialize to the things that you want, because there's a difference between getting someone into the product and letting them do that versus getting someone's contact information and then having them go through a 180-day sales cycle. And so in terms of performance marketing and results, it ultimately ends up to what you quantify as the result. If you're looking for revenue for a complex sale from performance marketing, it's going to take a really long time because I go in and audit the companies that do it, and they generate 3,000 MQLs a month and might close one deal from that. And so, and then if you're in product led, and you're in a big TAM and you have it figured out on AdWords or Facebook or wherever you need to figure it out, you can get people into the product and they move through the product led flow into a paying user. And there's a big TAM, you can just start moving. And that stuff is pretty cool. So again, there's a lot of nuances, which is what I love about these types of questions, is that you can get into that. And so it really depends on the type of the business and where that type of marketing fits in the most. I think that a lot of companies, when you think about performance marketing, it started in direct to consumer e-com, because it was very clear to know that you spent $8 to acquire that customer and they gave you $28 of profit and you made $20 of profit, and you're going to keep running that machine until it doesn't work anymore, because you're literally just printing money and new customers as you do it and getting paid to do it. And so that makes sense. And then it found its way into some form of SaaS. And if you do it with a sales action, then it's going to be really low efficiency. And so what people have done is migrated it to an ebook, so their CPA looks better, their cost per lead looks better. And so it's weird how you see certain marketing trends move into different types of spaces where they don't belong.
Does that answer your question, Damien? Any follow-ups there?
Yeah. Let's chat. Get on here.
Yeah, I think it's you're basically confirming a lot of the thoughts that I had on performance. When I have these conversations with some of these folks and CEOs and business leaders, what they're hoping for is this B2C movement in a B2B world. And it's so hard for me to just bite my tongue and say, hey, we can't just be pumping things to ebooks and expecting it to work out.
What about tell me more about the company, and then we can go more detailed.
Yeah, so it's I work in 2 different areas. One is healthcare, where you have some experience in, and med device, and the other area is financial services like fintech.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Expensive sales motion product. So high
Exactly.
ACV, sales motion behind it.
Correct.
So this is fascinating. What stage? How mature is this organization? I'm guessing that's early.
Yeah, early, yes.
It's funny how early. It's definitely pre-B. It's fascinating because if you talk to enough people, you can start to see the patterns, and I can almost like know that that's happened. People in the series C, D, E don't say those things because they've already tried them and they realize that they don't work. The people in series A and B don't know that yet. And so it's really interesting to do that, which is why we've stopped moving to that size and maturity of organization, mainly because the expectations are 100% unrealistic. So yeah, they think that they're going to come in and they're going to have a 180-day sales cycle type of deal, and they're going to put $5K in ad spend and put one demand marketer on it when they have 20 salespeople chasing people around and can't close business, and that the one demand marketer with $5,000 in budget is going to dramatically move the needle straight away, like metrics moving up into the, like almost straight up, not even up into the right, just like a rocket ship, like that stupid emoji that I see all the time. And so and so it's really funny because, and the way that I've tried to frame it up for these types of people, and maybe it'll help you, is if you can benchmark your cost per SQO and your customer acquisition cost on their outbound channel, which they have, and it's probably well developed, probably at least 12 heads on that side, then, and you can benchmark how much it costs them to get a meeting, how much it costs them to get an SQO, how much it costs them to get a customer, then you have a realistic expectation. And you can also measure sales cycle and average deal size and conversion rates through the funnel on that, which gives you a baseline to say, okay, if you want to spend $5,000 a month, right now it's costing us on our outbound for our enterprise SaaS company, it's costing us $6,000 to get an SQO. And it's costing us $39,000 to get a customer. And so if you're going to give me $5,000 a month in a 180-day sales cycle, I'll be lucky to get you one customer in a year. And then you can start to frame it. And that's where it's funny because we all, at this point, I've learned enough to say that to the Series A company that wants to work with us. And it ironically pushes them away, which is funny. Like it just by me saying that, they disqualify themselves, which has been funny. So yeah, what else you got? Would be happy to share, but like that's what I see. And so those,
yeah, you basically nailed it. That's pretty much the conversation we had, and tried to redirect them to, what you need to be doing now to build to get what you're actually looking for, because the way this transactional focus, it doesn't actually work. So I think you're right, and they kind of end up moving away from you anyway, because that's not what they're looking for.
Yeah. And even to be clear, even on the B2C side where there's direct transaction revenue, there are plenty of companies that run performance marketing and lose money every time they acquire a customer, because they are assuming that people are going to repeat order 6 times and they don't. Companies that are selling a $29 product on Instagram are not acquiring that customer for $29. And so, and then the $29 product minus the margin, minus the overhead, minus the advertising expense, they're underwater. But they're assuming the LTV and the brand lift that they can get to a place where it's driving more organic because so many people have the product, they're telling their friends, there's different things. And sometimes it materializes and sometimes it doesn't. And so even when you have this this place where executives think that it's even in B2C, even those companies like bleed money on the ads. So I personally like selling complex B2B software over these types of things, not using performance marketing, because there is enough margin to create a customer acquisition cost that is much lower than the sales channel and still very acceptable for the business. But normally companies have to get to a certain stage where they realize that the outbound channel is not going to scale and they need to figure this stuff out. And so when you're at, I think I have something typed up, a post about this, but it's really interesting. When you're 400K ARR, you can get away with super low efficiency outbound. You can even get away with it up in, $5-10 million. And at some point, there's too much, the revenue gross number to hit the same type of growth rate gets too big, and it doesn't work. So growth slows down. And so eventually companies figure out that they need to go in a different way. And I, recommend to people that they figure it out sooner than later, but everyone has their own type of journey. But in general, it is a misunderstanding about what's required to make a marketing engine work. Like that's really what it is, because it's not one demand marketer and $5,000. Cool, man. Great question. Good to see you.
Jess just popped a question in the chat.
Yes, Jess, we're counting on you.
So let's bring her back on, touching on brand marketing and LinkedIn. And we have some fun LinkedIn questions that got submitted in advance too. Yep. So this is a nice bridge.
So it's more around how, if you can convince the company that moving away from just being MQLs and you want to look tighter revenue and all that, and you want to say that we're going to do all this more work on organic LinkedIn and build up that audience and community and make sure that it's the right ICP that we're targeting, and they're the ones that are doing all the commenting. When you do your monthly reporting, how can you communicate that we are tracking that way without it being like, is there anything you can do to sort of make it like pull out some of the individual comments to show these are the kind of things people are saying, or just tracking like, of the LinkedIn followers we've got, these ones seem to fall within our ICP as far as industry, or how do you quantify it?
How big is the business? Just in general range, like order of magnitude. 5 million, 100 million?
About 10.
Okay. Yeah. So at 10 million, the marketing mix is probably not that complex, but it's probably complex enough. Like our marketing mix is super easy, and I believe in this. And so if somebody gets to me from LinkedIn or the podcast or YouTube, it doesn't matter to me, because I consider it all part of the same mix. Like I don't care about channel attribution because all of the touch points matter, and it's all part of the same formula. I'm already recording this. I might as well put it on YouTube. I'm already recording it. I might as well chop it up and put it on LinkedIn. I'm already recording. I might as well put it on a podcast. And so it's all the same to me. I think when it comes down to like the overall marketing mix, I fall back on the exact same advice I give to everyone, which is how many people are coming to you to buy becomes the business lever. And so how many people are filling out the demo form? How many people in the ICP are filling out the demo form and then moving to SQO? Those would be like your business metrics that you track over a 3, 6, 9 month period to see trends, knowing that there are other parts of the mix. And then at the channel level, you're measuring qualitative engagement of the comments is great. Who's commenting? What are they saying? Are they in the ICP? Are they consistently engaging? Are they watching videos? Do we believe that the videos that we're showing are helping change their perception about something that matters to our business? Who's following us? Who's liking the post? It's very qualitative, which is why executives have trouble understanding it. I don't truly believe in like the follower count growth. I just don't see that mapped. It's almost like website visits. It doesn't map directly to any real business outcome. So that's how I would look at it. The second thing is that like for me, I got immediate confidence because 50% of the inbounds come through a DM, not through a form. And so I know it came from LinkedIn. And the third thing that you can do is you can ask like, whoever's on, for people listening, if you have Gong, you can pull out LinkedIn podcasts, you can pull out terms and start to look on recorded calls, or you sit on the call and you listen. Like I knew that Facebook ads were working in 2015 because sales reps would tell me that they go into cold discovery calls with customers and they say, we see your ads all the time on Facebook. And I was like, I guess it's working. And so those are like 3 different approaches. Business level, if it's really moving, you should see that. But if you have a lot of inbound flow coming from other channels, it might get watered down and you wouldn't be able to notice that. Like that's something that we go in a different direction here. That's something we noticed as well. This is sort of off topic, but sort of on topic, is like we were running stuff for a client We were spending 40K a month on Facebook, and they were spending 250K a month on AdWords, and they were driving like $3 CPA low volume garbage into the demo form. And we're over here generating good demos, but they're generating whatever 20,000 garbage demos or free trial signups a month. And we're putting up whatever it is. Let's just say it's 500 a demo. So we're putting up 800 demo requests, and you don't even see it because there's so much noise. And so if there's a lot of noise in your funnel, it might be hard to see the 2 or 3 ones that come through LinkedIn, which was why I would default to qualitative metrics on the channel to know that the channel's working, and then probably ask in discovery calls or listen. You would hear that type of stuff. I can't tell you. I don't say any. I don't prompt anyone. I don't ask them. I don't do anything. And it always starts. I was listening to your podcast, and I was been binging your LinkedIn content, and I would love to talk about this. And so people will, if the content's good, people will tell you. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you need to have those business metrics. But I guess from my question was more around, you want to have those sort of leading indicator type things, which is at the channel level. And if you've just convinced the business into doing in this method, they want to go, well, how can we see whether or not LinkedIn has started working, even if we haven't seen it return in revenue yet? So it's just by, if it is something that someone said that they listen to the podcast, like where does that information ever get stored to be able to say, look, this stuff is working?
Yeah. So, I mean, we measure quantitative data. Like I know what the podcast subscriber is. I know how that's broken up between Spotify, Apple, and others. I know which episodes get more viewership than others, but it's really dependent on post time and different things like that. I know how many followers and what the growth is, and how the reach is tracking, and how many people are engaging, and how many average comments I have, and how that's differed from 6 months ago. And so like I look at all of those different numbers, which give you a data point. But those data points, if they become like the North Star, can actually have you do the wrong things to move those metrics, right? And so it sort of goes, I mean, it's kind of off topic, but I'll riff on it while we're here, which is part of the agenda, which is, and we can talk about it in LinkedIn, but it also works in other channels, is how to build an agile content framework, right? And so like the idea on this one is, how do you put something out and then use what you get back to fuel future? And so it's super interesting, and it's sort of meta in the way that we're doing it right now, because I'm getting questions, I'm answering them, I record it, I put it on LinkedIn, I get 30 comments from other people that hear my point of view, and then I can go back, I refresh my point of view. I was like, okay, what I said there was not the right messaging. It didn't hit. This one worked. This one didn't. You start to move inside of the comments as well. You get questions, you get objections, you get haters, you get people that saying you're great, you get all of it. And so you can use that feedback to then fuel the content in like real time. I was doing that a very long time ago, 5 or 6 years ago, on Facebook ads, when the engagement was different than it is right now. And so doing that is different than, it's sort of like, for me, the death of the 12-month content calendar. Like, how do you know what ebook you're going to make 6 months from now? And I think so people plan it out. And the reason that they plan it out is based on company strategic priorities versus what the audience is telling them. 100% off topic from your question, but I just wanted to slide that in there. Thanks, Jess. Appreciate you. Hope to see another question back in a little bit. Cool. There was some good ABM stuff in here. Another thing, while we pull a question, I just wanted to get something in on the brand or performance thing. I truly believe what I'm about to say, which is that people, especially inside of companies, do not like running things that get tagged with the word brand, because it's something that marketers have used to not be accountable for results for a very long time. It's also something that marketers have used to that haven't been effective. People tell me all the time they chalk up their trade show as a brand execution, which then can justify them wasting a bunch of money, or whatever else is happening. And so If you can, the way, I know that I'm not going to change the world's perspective on this, but if you can shift your perspective about what a brand execution really is, I think that might open up for some people to understand. I think it's more comes down to the measurement than anything.
Should we jump into some more questions?
Would love to. Definitely.
I saw Alex come on. There's another waterfall we can talk about.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, everyone.
Alex, you want to read your question? Good to see you.
Usually when Alex asks a question, I have like right away, I'm like, I know how I'm going to answer, but these ones I didn't have that feeling.
Wait. Alex, did you get a haircut?
I did, yeah.
Looking good, looking sharp.
Oh,
Appreciate it. I'm cooking at the same time, so apologize for the
nice.
not being on camera.
Multitasking.
That's right. Okay, this one's a little vague, but purposely. So can you walk us through a media buying waterfall? And what inputs do you use to form your strategy? So I guess if you really wanted to put some rails around this, it's assume, the sweet spot, the B2B SaaS, call it A series or B series if you'd like. But maybe no previous media buying strategy before. There may be new marketing function added to the organization. It was all outbound led before.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a new marketer, you're kind of tasked with, all right, we're willing to set aside some media budget, but how much and where? So where do you start with your inputs to kind of form that strategy? Knowing that it's an iterative process always, but
Mm-hmm.
at least at the first go.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. The first step for me is taking a hard look of whether or not there's existing demand or not. I think that's the first step, which will drive your channels into intent channels or to awareness channels. If there's a lot of existing demand, paid search, SEO, review sites, where, 6 Sense intent data, whatever. For a lot of companies, even that's not enough because those channels are mature and expensive. And so like, even for companies that do have a lot of search demand, like, is it cool to sell a 40K ARR SaaS product with a 12-month advertising CAC payback? Not really. How else could you spend that $40,000? You know what I mean? And so, because paid search for certain industries is incredibly expensive and incredibly competitive. And in order to even have that materialize through the funnel, you need to put a lot through, and there's $100 clicks. You can see how that math ends up playing out. And so I typically lean on create demand no matter what, because I think that it's more, I just think it's more effective in most situations, not all. And so when you think about create demand, the next thing is, who am I trying to get to? And then what are the channels that are most effective to get to? If it's 15 to 19-year-olds, TikTok ads. Like, it's just, and if it's, 45 to 75-year-old B2B people, Facebook is the place. Like, Facebook is the place, regardless of how people think, especially given the difference in the CPM cost between those two platforms. And if you're going super low TAM, super small TAM, executive buyer, small buying committee, then I would go LinkedIn, super narrow targeted. And so anyway, those are some examples, but so it's is there demand or not? And then who am I trying to get to? What is the most effective channel to get to that demographic? It's actually like not that much different between. It's just like, are you less than 45 or not? And then how much are you willing to spend on the different channels, and how much scale do you need between the channels? And then from there, it's, what am I trying to accomplish? And so then I say, okay, what am I trying to accomplish? I'm trying to sell to project managers at tech companies, whatever. And so what I want them to do is I want them to know about what our product does and the specific feature that nobody else has, because we're competing with Monday.com and all these different places, and they do not solve this pain point. So I want everyone to know, which is a huge total addressable market, about this one feature. Then I am going to run Facebook feed and Instagram story ads targeted at all of those people, highlighting that specific feature to a product page that discusses that exact feature. And so you can sort of see how I went through that progression. Audience drives channel, and then objective drives kind of like content, creative, destination, landing page, and objectives.
Makes sense.
And then you just feed it all back. If you have the same thing, and it's like, I want everyone to know about this new study that I did one it was actually the first time I ever ran a B2B Facebook ad, actually, where we had a clinical trial come out, and it had been out for 18 months, and I went and I had sales meetings with people that we were trying to sell to, and none of them knew about it. And I knew that the market was huge. And so I took that clinical study and I put a little write-up about it, and I linked to it, and I ran Facebook ads to the entire market. And at that point I paid like $500 for the entire market to know that study came out. And it was just like, that was my objective, and that was what I was trying to accomplish, and I did it. And so again, and this is a lot for younger companies, and it goes into Damien's question as well, especially in paid social, not every objective should be a demo request or a lead. If you're selling complex SaaS, like, you need to break away from that model, or you're not going to get the results that you want. And I think you had a second one, or maybe you have a follow-up, but I always enjoy this time we have together on Tuesdays.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the second one was more about team structure that I've seen personally, and it goes to your point about the balance between performance and brand. So some companies structure their marketing function, and they kind of separate the team, maybe not equally in two parts, but certainly in two parts. And so one part will be performance, or they'll call it life cycle, something like this. And then the second part of the team, separate to them, will be called ABM. And so the ABM team. And I don't have that structure. I've never been in a structure like that, but I always wondered, like, why? Like, what is the benefit to that? Is basically one team just working on like larger accounts, and then the other team is just working on an SMB segment or something like this, that they need to split it up? Like, is it really that? Can the marketers not work up and down the full life cycle in this manner? I'm just curious, like, why companies would set it up that way, if you've seen it.
I personally don't understand the distinction, but again, I don't like really know all that much about what's going on at the company. Like, for instance, I do see a place where this structure works, but it's a very specific place. And so let's say we have 50 accounts that are all worth 10 million ARR plus, and then the rest of this market we're selling, the huge market we're selling to, is 30K ACV. At that point, I would have my like team, my ABM team, subject matter expert. Like, I would have a separate team that is built around just marketing to those accounts. But you could see how extreme that split is, that I don't think that it fits for most organizations to do it that way. And so my feeling would be no. I've also seen companies that have demand focused on capturing existing demand. The demand team is focused on capturing the demand, and they have the brand team focused on creating demand, which I don't think is a logical or correct structure either. The demand team must be able to create demand, not just capture it. And so I think that it gets you into a really scary place if your brand team is focused on creating demand, because brand normally means organic channels unmeasured. And so you end up with a team that's really capable of capturing the demand, and then eventually there's only so much demand because your brand team's not creating enough at a high enough rate. And so I don't see that distinction either. I mean, I think the split that I've been thinking about most recently is capture versus not, but I wouldn't call it demand and brand. I think that's semantics, but it's truly in my view, a different skill set to capture demand versus create it. And so that would be an interesting way to look at it if you're selling a ACV that's not super dynamic. Because then you have one team: search, conversion rate optimization, lead handoff optimization, sales process optimization. How do we get the calendar in the demo form? How do we make that happen? How do we make the routing happen? How do we follow up in 5 minutes? Like, that's some interesting stuff, review sites. How do we get trust radius reviews dynamically inserted onto our website based on the keyword that someone searched? Whatever. There's a bunch of shit that you could do. And so that's one job on its own. And then you have the other job. It's challenging when you split the teams out, as long as the person overseeing it makes sense, because one team is incentivized to convert as many people as possible, which may not be the actual people that you want to convert. But then on the other side, you have this create demand team, which is much heavier content, social and awareness channels, organic channels, potentially PR. Like, that's an interesting split to me.
I like that.
Cool.
Got
Thanks,
a question.
All right, brother. Good to see you.
Got a question submitted to me directly that I think is building on this. And there might not be an answer, but for a traditional B2B company, is there a rule of thumb of how much of the budget should be allocated for like brand building, for the creating demand? I don't know if there's a percentage. It's probably dependent. What say you?
I don't think there's a black and white answer to this. The things that come to mind is, like, most companies, like, if you just take a back of the napkin kind of stroke, will spend 10% of revenue on marketing, which is an interesting budget allocation if you look at how much that would be allocated to sales, which is often, and that 10% often becomes 6%, and the sales allocation becomes somewhere between 30 and 60%. And so you have these very huge discrepancies in how that budget is allocated between the two, based on some textbook that was written in 1998. Based on an investor giving you advice the last time they operated a company was in 2001. And so I think that's where it gets most scary. And I'll try and get to the brand side, but I'm going to cover this just a little bit more. And I think I've covered it a couple of times, but like, if you're in a company, and if you're in a privately owned company, you can usually, and public ones, you can get to the P&L, you can understand cost of sales, and you can understand how the commercial budget is allocated. Like, I've looked at P&Ls and I've been like, okay, so we spent $3 million on marketing and we spent $39 million on sales. Something doesn't feel right here. And marketing drove 40% of revenue and sales drove 60% sourced. Obviously it's a team. But when you look at that, the cost to acquire customers between the two is ridiculously different. And so how could you kind of like break the model or break out of the textbook and look at what's happening today and make adjustments? On the brand side, I think it's based on stage, execution, skills, company demographics like ACV and TAM, and buyer personas and different stuff like that. And so I don't think there is a black and white answer to that. For me, I think that if I was like, let's just say I came in and I'm operating we are a Series C company that just raised $65 million. The first thing I'm doing is figuring out how to make the paid go as hard as it can. And then I'm going to layer on organic from there, because the paid is the thing that's going to get you the stuff. It's the fastest you can get. In organic, you're waiting for people to follow you or discover you or different things like that. In paid, you can target them and just go get them. And so if you think about it less like a lead gen and more of like a lot of the stuff that we do for companies is the same thing that I do on LinkedIn, except that we have to reformat the content to be delivered through paid, and then we guarantee delivery to everybody. How nice would it be if you're selling to whatever, I'm running out of examples here, chief information security officers, and you know that there are 50,000 in the US, and there are 10 things that you want to tell them, and over the next 10 weeks you tell them one thing every week, and you guarantee delivery of all that information. And if you do it the right way, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 of those people, which is like 4 or 5%, will click and engage and consume that information. And you build block by block, and over time you change someone's perception about whatever you're trying to do. And so it becomes very much more a game of psychology and education than math and performance.
So we have a bunch of LinkedIn questions. I think
We're going to do is a new
LinkedIn
segment of
segment.
Demand Gen Live, which is like the rapid LinkedIn.
Yeah, you ready for this?
Sure.
A few of them are from people that submitted, but it doesn't look like they're on yet, so I can read a couple of them, and then
Cool.
our friend John has one where we can bring him on at the end. So I feel like I have to ask Bob's question on his behalf because he would be here if he could.
Mm-hmm.
He's just dealing with a company webinar tonight. He wanted to know your thoughts, though, on the LinkedIn algorithm and recent changes. He has been posting videos of his new podcast, but it's not getting any engagement. And it really happened about a month ago is when he started seeing the drop. A fraction of the views previously, since they made the change with stories. Wanted to know your thoughts, if you should be taking a different approach.
So I don't know what the driver is. It was around the time that stories launched, but also other things happened, like people with larger followings started to have less reach. It happens on both text and on video for that matter. It just feels more dramatic on video because the video views are actual views, not impressions on a text post. And so, yes, do my really good videos that used to go for 8 to 10,000 views and 400 to 1,000 likes and comments now go for 1,200 views and 40 to 50 likes and comments? Yes, that's what's happening right now. My text posts get less traction, definitely not the ones that with like the rocket ship that takes off for 1 million views. That stuff hasn't happened for me in a while. So it's impossible to deny that things are changing. And so our job is to adjust to the reality of the platform. The platforms will change. And so there's two decisions that you need to make. The first one is how much do you want to stretch to the algorithm? Because when you stretch the algorithm, you usually move out of the thing that was working, right? So I'm staying true to video because LinkedIn it's a smart company. LinkedIn realizes how important video is long term, and I believe that the value of a 4-minute video view is far better than a 3-second impression on a text post. And so I continue to lean into video despite the fact that the viewability of a video is down somewhere between 50 and 75%. And so that's one piece, like, and it's just how platforms mature. If people were posting videos on Instagram in 2014, or I'm not even sure if they had videos back then, they're posting a picture in 2014. It's a lot different than if you went in with no followers and posted right now. Instagram, you have to have incredible content and a ton of shareability to have any shot of breaking out right now because it's just saturated. And so LinkedIn is not at that place, but this is it. And it's never a sharp drop. Like, this feels sharp, but it's not really that sharp. Platforms decline gradually. And over time, LinkedIn will make the algorithm prioritize ads as they try and make more ad revenue, and they're going to have to play that game. And so I would personally stay the course, but I would also be looking for other avenues to distribute content, and I would be mixing in more text. And also, like, if we had Bob on here, I would talk, how many followers do you have? What is your connection strategy? How many followers or connections are you adding every week? Because if you don't have an active strategy to build an audience and you're just waiting for people to come find you and follow you, then over time you probably will have results decline.
So let's take this a step further from David. I'm curious what you would do, Chris, if LinkedIn changed their algorithm tomorrow and you lost all of your personal and Refine Labs reach. What would be your next play? It's a good hypothetical.
So it's a really interesting hypothetical, not one that I've been asked before. But to be clear for people, like I was doing the same thing in 2016 on 2013 on Facebook organic to sell stuff on e-commerce, in 2015 for B2B, in 2016 on Instagram to sell things on e-commerce, and then on LinkedIn. And so like if a platform falls down, did the platform fall down or just did my profile fall down as the first thing? If the platform's gone, then all the people that spend time on LinkedIn are going to go somewhere else. And I'm just going to follow them to somewhere else. If it's my personal profile that's gone and everyone else is still going on LinkedIn, I would just rebuild. And I think that I would rebuild and be fine. And so those are not the most creative answers. So I'll give some, I think I understand the nature of the question. I'll try and like give them something a little bit more. The next thing that I would go to is I would go back to the things that I'm doing right now, this Zoom and podcast, and most likely maybe go and find something on a different platform like TikTok. Like those are the places. But it's a really interesting, I hope it never happens. But luckily, if while you're building, you recognize that you don't want to be stuck in one platform, like this question is a ton more relevant, I think, for people that get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to post pictures on Instagram about brands, because that one is a single source. We've been able to, as you grow, to make sure that you have other things going on. Like I never sell to the audience. I don't make money off of the audience. And so being able to have the audience spread out into different places, I think is critical too.
I like that answer. It was a good.
But in general, if you create good information and you understand distribution, there is always a place to build. It's just about finding the right angle, and it takes some time and some creativity and just some intuition and experience. But if you have something good to say and it brings value to people, then you just got to find the people and then give it to them.
We're going to wrap up our LinkedIn segment by
That's it? You said a ton of questions.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Sorry.
We're going to bring on John. He has 2 more LinkedIn questions for you. So that will conclude the LinkedIn segment. Okay. But John, come on, you submitted a couple in here, so you can ask them all.
I did. You're very kind. A couple things, Chris. You engage on LinkedIn obviously a lot, and
I do.
You obviously do it very well. I'm curious of 2 things. One, how the hell do you do it? In other words, how much time a day are you spending on LinkedIn, and how do you chunk it, or how do you approach it so it's not just sucking all your time?
Not much, to be honest. I would say if you exclude responding to comments on my own posts and actually publishing content and purely on engagement of other people's content, it's probably less than 10 minutes.
Well, it's the comments that you make on your own post that I continue to be amazed with how much you can engage.
Yeah, and that's like, I don't set aside time. It's like I have 3 minutes between this meeting. This meeting ends early. I'm walking my dog. I'm bored before I go to bed, or those. Okay. I squeeze them in at those types of times. I don't carve out time to do it. Normally, like, I do engage a lot, but like comments on my post are oftentimes like 3 emojis. The important take home here is about listening to what people are saying. So like, it's less about how I respond and more about that I read what they said. And so I think that part is really interesting that some people don't see. And then a lot of times on comments, I make a comment so that I can see what other people think about it. I really do. And that's why they come off as like sort of extreme, because I'm trying to understand how people are going to react to a point of view. I rarely comment, "Congratulations, Susie, I agree with you." You know what I mean? And so like, I have specific opinions, and I want to understand how I have a ton of CMOs and marketing leaders and demand people and different stuff like that. And I really want to know how they think. So I use it a lot to test messaging, which I think is part of my job.
And then if you got any big learnings from these changes to the algorithm, I mean, when I started coming to Demand Gen Live, almost every day, you would be like the first thing in my feed the next day or for the next several days. And now I got to go look for you. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of different things have changed. Have you guys had any big learnings thus far in playing around?
So I actually think this is a something that's been in LinkedIn for a while. You just might notice it on me. But if when I started like getting serious about LinkedIn, you know, spring, summer of 2019, there were people with 60 to 100,000 followers that would post and not get a ton of traction. I actually think that it's sort of built into the algorithm. I also, over time, had people come in and then would be very engaged and then would exit. And I think that is a common flow, not because they're getting bored of my content. I'm sure some people are getting bored, but I don't think that's the core reason. I think that they get the engagement. And then if you stop engaging 1, 2, 3 times, then the algorithm starts moving it away. I think that it makes, that the algorithm makes fast changes based on like 1 or 2 impressions. It's just a complete guess. But I do see ebbs and flows about how people enter and exit my content. Nothing, I don't think any tangible insights there. But that's what I'm seeing. In addition, like as more people publish content, it becomes more competitive. I brought this up and may the best content win. And so I brought this up is people, I hear the objection a lot. I don't want to start a podcast or because there's too many people already doing it, or I don't want to post on LinkedIn. There's already a million marketers posting on LinkedIn. I don't want to do it, but I'll blog. And I'm like, did you realize that there are 500 million active blogs and only 1 million people posting on LinkedIn and only 500,000 active podcasts? And so, and then if you actually niche down to your specific thing, it is way less competitive in these new channels than the mature old channels. And so LinkedIn will move into a place where it becomes more mature, where there's a lot of content. And when there's a lot of content, normally more bad content enters the feed and more ads enter the feed, and people start to not pay attention. And people will over time find somewhere new. It could be a Zoom, it could be a Slack community, it could be a new social platform. Perhaps I've always had this theory that there will be like niche down, verticalized, like mini LinkedIns that are owned by different companies that are like the marketing LinkedIn or the, you know, this LinkedIn. I don't know if that's going to happen, but like I could see places where it becomes more like narrow. Bravado is kind of doing it in sales right now. I don't know much about the company. I haven't been in the platform, but I understand they're kind of like going in that direction. And so
Slack's doing it. There's a lot of Slack channels.
Yeah, the difference between a Slack channel, and I thought about, for whatever reason, I thought about this before the episode, but not based on your question, is that Slack channels do not create new visibility to people that do not know about you, right? The Slack channel is locked. So I guess for some way that if people come into the Slack, you can start to get that attention. I'm really curious to see how that one plays out. I guess if I think about it deeply, it's sort of the same. Like someone has to be on LinkedIn in order to get exposed to the content that I post. And so, yeah, I would love to see how Slack plays. I know a ton of people that have there are communities being built and people engage a lot. So we'll see what happens with that one.
Good questions, John.
Good to see you, John.
That. I want to get Anna's question in before she has to go have dinner with her kids. Let's bring Anna on. It's a good one.
Thank you so much. So my question is really so lately I've been getting inbound. I'm a founder of a marketing consultancy, and I've been getting a lot of inbound from my content that I'm posting on LinkedIn, which is great, but it doesn't always match my target audience, my ICP. Mm-hmm. So these are small businesses. I can help them. It's like, if I can help startups, I can definitely help these people. So I almost don't want to turn them away. But then they're going to take up my time, and I can't do the other stuff that I should be doing with my target audience. So how do you approach this? Right. So do you offer them a different package, which is what I've been thinking about. It's like a, it's something that I created already, and then they have like 4 calls with me, and I help them. It's like a do-it-yourself sort of package that I offer to them. Or do I just stop talking to them? What would you recommend?
What are you trying to accomplish long term? You're just trying to always have clients and do things that you love, or are you trying to grow it and have multiple employees that are then like, where do you want to go?
It's a great question. I do want to build this out as a business and have employees, just not this year because I have 2 kids. But I see there's a big need, and I see there's just so much opportunity, but yes, I do want to build this into a business with employees.
So both answers are right. It just depends which one is right for you, and that's only a decision that you can make. And so there are 2 paths. Like you laid out both. I'll just give you more tactical on how you could do both. And so on the first one, let's just say that you want to stay focused on your ICP. You have something that's working. Those people are happy. You don't want to get distracted, especially right now. Then the right answer for me would be to call out in your headline and in your profile who you do the work for. And I would make it more clear on the website, and you're not going to stop all of them. Like, I still get some that are entirely not the right fits, but actually it's gone down a lot. And so I think just by making it very specific would start to remove a lot of those inquiries that you're just not what you're looking for.
You would think, but like my whole profile is like, I help startup founders and marketing leaders. It's completely very clear. I have the podcast I just started that's like featuring startup founders and marketing leaders. I think it's pretty clear, but I do think people just don't necessarily care. And they're like, oh, she seems like she understands marketing. So then they reach out.
Yeah.
But maybe that'll go down over time.
What types of startups? There could just be some confusion on the audience side.
That's true too. So I do talk about like funded startups. So it has to be seed funded, Series A, Series B is typically where I dabble.
So I would think about saying that. And who knows if it's going to super help, but I could see how the $1.4 million small business thinks that they're a startup, even though they're like a small bit, not a venture funded, just a small business locally. I could see that confusion from that person. And so potentially being more specific, and always you can just say, hey, like, I appreciate you reaching out. This is just not who we help. Like, both of those answers are fine. And I think that, I don't know how far you are on your LinkedIn journey, but it happens early, and then for whatever reason it goes away. Like, that stuff it happened to me, and now it's not happening.
Okay, that's what I wanted to like check. Is this normal? And maybe I just need to tighten up my message, and it will eventually go away. Now,
let's say that you take the path where you do want to help them. So, like I said, both paths are interesting. Like, I've taken stuff that was not ICP and have learned a ton. About something that I didn't know that made them fit into the model, or often learned something that verified or something new about why it didn't work, or have then opened up a new offering because it was working so well and they had value. So if you can go into it knowing that the core thing that's happening is you're getting paid to learn, then it becomes a very inviting opportunity, as long as you don't let the actual business fail while you're doing that learning. Right?
That's a great point.
And so make them very defined. Experiment, you can call them an experiment, a client, whatever. If you really feel like there's something that you have to offer that's valuable to them that would help, I think that's like the step that you need to make. If it's just about the money, then I wouldn't do it. But if you feel like there's something that you can help, you just don't really know the inner workings, you haven't systemized it or different things like that, I think it's fine because you were a consultant selling your expertise, and like expertise, especially at a one person consulting, which is what I did to start, allowed you to open up to a lot of different things. Like, I was fractional CMO for some companies at the beginning, and over time I just learned about the specific place that really brought value and a specific ICP inside of that really worked. And so now I'm very narrow, and we don't take a lot of those different turns right now because we have something that's growing super fast, and all the people that we have and that we're hiring need to be focused there.
Yeah.
But over time, we will continue to look and experiment. Like, I'm super interested. We have 2 companies that are launching product-led offerings. All we've been doing is mid-market enterprise SaaS with sales motion behind it. I can't wait. We didn't have to go out and acquire them. Like, they're just offering it. So now we get to go in and really figure this out. I actually think that it's going to be easier than what we do right now, but we'll see.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Happy to help. Have fun with the kids.
Thanks.
For dinner. Yeah.
Good question, Anna. We have one more question that was submitted beforehand, which is back to LinkedIn and Facebook ads, really tactical, which I think was part of the agenda.
Yep, it was.
Too. Should I frame this up and you can kind of get into this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So he's not on, but this is let's see, what type of company is it? They're launching LinkedIn ads this week. And so he's interested in targeting or ad strategies. They were advised that Facebook might not work as well. Could you give insight on how you target people on Facebook? Our personas are CFOs and HR managers at startups with more than 100 employees. Our product is an equity management platform that helps startups manage their incentive plans, finance rounds, and investor relations.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, LinkedIn and Facebook targeting and ad strategy.
Yeah. So if you could, there was a lot of like sub questions in there. So just make sure I stay on track here. So the first thing is that like the idea that you can't get to these people on Facebook is just flat out wrong. Like, what if you, you can do it natively. I heard the 2 titles, CFO, HR manager. You can get to those people and you can deal with the small amount that don't work at sub 100 companies, and it well offsets the difference in CPM cost between Facebook and LinkedIn. And so going into Facebook, if you know that you're not going, that some people that see the ad may not be exactly who you're selling to, and you're okay with that because it's 10 to 15x cheaper, then you're in a pretty good spot. And so you can go in and literally, without a tool like Metadata or Clearbit or any of the other ones, you can literally go in and say, I want to target HR managers and CFOs and controllers and, accounting managers in the United States. And if you want, you can layer on an interest, or you can layer on different things like that. And then you can go out and target them natively on Facebook for $8 CPM instead of 80 to 120. And so the first misconception there, like, yes, there are certain people and there are certain demographics, especially industry segmented demographics, that make it hard to target natively on Facebook. If you need that and you're spending, I would say it's the range. If you're spending more than $25K a month on LinkedIn ads, you should definitely go and spend $2,000 or whatever it is per month on a tool, and then start moving that money to Facebook, because it's going to work way harder for you. So that's one. So you're setting up LinkedIn ads. What was the next part? There was 10 questions.
Address the Facebook targeting, and just any ideas on targeting or ad strategies for LinkedIn.
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, you can literally go in and say, I want to target CFOs and HR managers at companies that have greater than 100 employees, and you can do all of your B2B targeting inside of LinkedIn. If I were you, I would add at least one level of seniority lower, and make sure that the audience size isn't 1 million, because if you haven't run LinkedIn ads before, it can get very expensive. And so try to be quite narrow. Again, I fall back on some of their advice. I truly like doing this, especially if it's not like 100K ACV plus. I truly like figuring this out on Facebook first. The second thing, which is sort of on the agenda, and then we'll go back because I think I'm still missing questions, is how are you going to measure it? And so when you're just booting up LinkedIn ads, and you're just trying to figure out what you're going to do, in the only way that this is what 100%, if you look at every single LinkedIn ad, the objective is a conversion. It is the only way that a B2B company can justify the cost of a LinkedIn ad, is to have a lead that they can go back and say, we got $50 leads, or we got $300 leads. And so that's the only way that you can justify it. And so if you're running your test, you're going to get forced into that bucket. Like I know I'm super guessing, but I'm pretty sure that your budget's not high enough to do anything else. And so you're going to have to run and I know companies that spend $40,000 a month on LinkedIn and have very inconsistent MQL flow for ebook downloads. And that's a very expensive channel to have to get 1 lead a day, 4 leads a day, 7 leads a day, like that are super low likelihood of even talking to your sales rep. And so I think that's the main challenge with LinkedIn is you really need to kind of have a real base of understanding how to advertise on that platform. And you need to have enough budget to actually be able to do something meaningful. Like if you're paying a lot of people that don't know what they're doing are going to pay more than $500 a lead on LinkedIn. So, $500 a lead is $15K a month. $500 a day, 1 lead a day would be $15K a month, which is a lot for most people.
We've actually tackled a lot of the questions. Julian had one, and I think you're still on.
Ooh, actually, it was part of the agenda. I just want to get to it for people. One thing that I've showed a couple people what we're doing you can do it on both Facebook and LinkedIn, but Facebook is just far more sophisticated in terms of how its ad platform's built out. This one's, and I just trust Facebook's cross-device data much better. And you can do it in LinkedIn too. You can create a custom conversion based on whatever action you want on the website. So for us, it is a demo conversion on the website. And then I'm going to put that into Facebook or LinkedIn, and then I'm going to measure on click-through and view-through the amount of people that do that action. On the Facebook side, you heard me mention it can do cross-device. And so what we're seeing right now is that Jimmy over here is on the train riding around and sees our ad for our finance software and doesn't even click on it. And then within 7 days comes back on a desktop computer and searches blah, blah, blah finance company and asks for a demo. And we can track that. Never going to show up in Salesforce. You would never see it. If you didn't track it, you would think that the ads were not working. And all of a sudden it is. We do also do it in LinkedIn, but like I said, I do not trust LinkedIn's data to have cross-device locked in enough to do it. But we're getting, $50K ACV software. We're getting $800 demo requests, $500 demo requests, $1,200 demo requests. The math on those things work. And so I found that to be really interesting for people that are deep in platform. It is the only path at high spends for you to be able to prove to executives that you can do something other than direct response. And so I've loved that. I love going in and being like, yeah, we spent $100,000 and there's 170 demo requests and we created this much pipeline from it. And I know that it's not showing up in channel attribution on Salesforce, but here's the information. Here's how many people submitted it. Here's the difference between who saw the ad versus who clicked on it and converted. Very fascinating how much the actual view, if you know how to do enough work in the feed, that the click actually doesn't matter that much. It's just because people are there and paying attention that you can create enough impact through high frequency, high spend, high messaging variation. And over 3, 6, 9 months really move the needle on what people think about your brand and your category. So anyone that's running, I would say if you're running more than 25K a month on LinkedIn and Facebook ads combined, you should have that stuff set up.
Nice. Julian, I see you. Let's bring him on and you can ask your question.
Hey, what's up, guys? So I have a question about ad delivery natively in LinkedIn or Facebook versus sending people to your website for content consumption. So the two different formats then are video for native consumption and like sending them to an article to read on your website. And Matt and I actually had this discussion the other day and just trying to think through, or I just like to get your take on this. I think there's a ton of value in someone consuming a piece of content that's like a piece of video content, however long that will be natively in the platform, the huge benefit obviously is they don't have to leave the platform. So the rate of consumption will just be a lot higher than if I sent them to my website and had them hope they consume it there.
Moving someone off site to watch a video on a paid social ad is not going to work. So your instincts are right there.
Yeah, meaning, you know, we're talking about, you know, if we want to distribute content, do we want to do it via video natively, or do we want to send people to an article where there's the added benefit of they can check out our website, they can check out the website, learn more about the product if they want to. And Matt, feel free to add anything if I'm missing anything here, but just trying to understand the different value propositions of those content delivery formats.
So if you're going to do the video in feed, it's got to be really good. Is pretty much what it comes down to. Like, if you can think back to the amount of social ads where you have stopped and watched a 3-minute video, the number is very small. Like for me, it was like the Budweiser where the dog was like saving someone on Facebook in like 2016 is the last time I do that. I watched people try and shove testimonial Zoom recordings into paid social ads on LinkedIn and spend a ton of money, and no one's consuming that. And so the video quality and thoughtfulness specifically for that channel needs to be on point for that to work. I've run a lot of video tests on a lot of social platforms. It's just really hard to get someone to stop and watch 3 minutes of anything inside of the feed when you're paying for it and they don't follow you and they didn't ask for it. And so that's something to think about. Can it work? Absolutely. Is it harder than it's a much harder creative and content lift to create that video? For sure. And so what we typically lean on is short form written content that a team can much more easily get on board with. It's the same thing with a YouTube pre-roll video. Like you look at the ones that were very successful, the Monday.coms and whoever else, Asana and different things like that. Those companies are spending $100,000 to produce the video, let alone the media on top of it. And so I think that is the challenge for B2B companies with in-feed video, is that normally it's just like not well thought out. They usually take a video that they already have and then try and put it in, and it's just not, it usually doesn't work out well. You can also take stuff like we've done in 2016. The format that I use on my LinkedIn organic videos is the exact same format that we would run Facebook paid videos with thought leadership. I did this in 2016 and we ran ads to it. And if you can hit the headline to get someone to stop, we had some that had super good engagement, but it was way far away from the product.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it's actually the exact thing we were doing. We were taking those, you know, little clips with a headline and subtitles and promoting those. Mm-hmm. And just to give you some metrics that I was seeing is, let's say we're paying like $3 to $4 for someone to consume a video at 75%, mm-hmm. and we're paying $5 a click. And this was on LinkedIn, probably not the best idea there, but mm-hmm. I mean, you could probably recreate something similar on Facebook. So like, I'm just trying to think through, you know, what's worth more, somebody watching a video for 2 minutes for $3 to $4, or someone going to my website for X dollars, where there is the added benefit of possibility of consuming more information about my product.
Yeah. The likelihood of someone, and it really depends on the product and different stuff like that, but I've spent it's probably close to $10 million on media over the past 5 years on social platforms, somewhere in that ballpark. And so the amount of people that click through a social ad, which is predominantly happening on a mobile device, Facebook, I just ran the research for a CMO, it was 98.5% of the entire delivery happened on mobile. So if you have a desktop experience, then it's just not going to work. You're going to hit 200 people in terms of reach, because no one uses Facebook on desktop computers anymore. And the idea that someone will go through, like, click on your ad and then look at 7 other pages of your website and then convert is just super low. It is just really low. People want to, I'd treat it like super snackable, bite-sized content, knowing that all I want to do is have someone read that. And if they get through the 2 minutes and they consume that message, then I've done my job. And so when you set the objectives like that, the person that goes through and the 1 out of whatever it is, 1 out of 10,000, 1 out of 100,000 is probably at that scale, that goes through, looks at 7 web pages, and then asks for a demo on their own, becomes like the cherry on top, not the expectation, which is the way I like to do it. But when you try and decide between video and words, like, it really is the quality and the message, right? So I can call you and I can send you a text and it has the exact same thing, but perhaps in one medium versus another, and how I communicate, it works differently. It's the same thing. So sorry, there's no clear answer because literally both can work. It just comes down to what are you trying to do?
Makes sense. Thank you.
Cool, man. Happy to help.
Thanks, Julian. Max has got a couple good questions.
What's up, Max?
Bring you on.
Good to have you
What's
here.
going on?
Hey.
Good to be here. All right, so 2 questions, pretty unrelated. First is Facebook ads. So for us, how would you recommend like segmenting between B2B and B2C? We have both of those on our websites, self-service for consumers, but I haven't really dug into our Facebook account, but it's just like we can't use our existing database of business contacts to put through like metadata and then target them, and the match rate's not going to be great. So I'm thinking the least path of resistance would just be retargeting based on business pages only, run ads on those, let it build up an audience there, and then pull some lookalikes from there. It's just there's going to be inevitably like bleeding between B2C and B2B, but I mean everyone still works, so it's kind of in the same bucket.
Is the B2C side actually executing a transaction?
Correct. Yes.
And the B2B is filling out a form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would go custom conversion route. And then, so you have the demo form, build a custom conversion off that. If depending on what type of e-com system you're using, like, you should be able to tie that back into Facebook quite easily. And then you can start to have campaigns optimized based on those different objectives. If you don't give it enough data, it's not going to work. And oftentimes it doesn't work anyway, because it's just like, you can't just build a machine where it just automatically feeds more people through. Like, it's not that simple. But that's the way that I would lean. In terms of targeting, it's going to be almost impossible unless you know B2B and you can build a named account list. And then you can run up to 30,000 accounts through metadata and build an audience. And then if you need to hit other personas in order to make the audience size big enough, I would do that. And then I would turn on audience expansion after that, in both in metadata and in platform. And so that can grow your audience, depending on the size, by 20 to 100%. And so that would be my sort of recommendation on the B2B side. And then B2C, I would just have an infinite loop on conversions for that specific thing and let Facebook do its thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And
yeah,
there will definitely be crossover and overlap. But that's what I would do.
Cool, man. And then second one is gonna be a quick one because I figured it's the answer that Damien and Alex already said, but for starting out a podcast, would you start it with kind of just some, like, I don't want to say test guests, but some guests that are like lower on your like top 10 guests, just so you can kind of work out the kinks and kind of get a feel for what direction it should go?
Yeah, it was funny. I'll get to your answer, but so I posted something about the podcast, about how we've been able to grow it and how we did it and different things like that. And somebody came in and said, yeah, but Chris, you don't understand. You already had a huge audience when you started the podcast, which made the podcast grow faster. And what they don't understand is that we were doing a video podcast in July of last year. We just didn't post it on Spotify. And what we did is we just filmed the podcast and then on the micro went out for LinkedIn. And that's how we built my LinkedIn profile, is by doing that. And so what actually happened first? Was it the podcast or was it the brand? It was actually the podcast, which built the brand, which then rebuilt the actual audio podcast. But to answer your question, I think it's a good idea, but I don't think it's a requirement. Like, there's plenty of people that have me as you know, and not to say I'm big, but like that have me on the first episode, and I'm happy to do it. And they fumble around things and they don't feel good, and it's just like it just doesn't matter to me. And so I wouldn't make that choice based on how the guest might perceive you. But if you feel like you need it, then that's what I did. I interviewed a ton of CMOs and VPs and different things like that, and never published the actual long form content. It's on YouTube. The video is, but I did it when I was doing it, it was for short form for LinkedIn, networking, market research, not necessarily for the audio podcast initially, and then practice. And so you can work out the kinks. I think like 2, 3, 4 times you really start to figure it out. And then from there, it's more so how you answer questions and control the conversation and stuff like that. When doing a podcast, what I've found as both a guest and a host is the value, how good a podcast is truly dictated on how good the host is.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. You can make guests very good or very bad based on how you ask questions and transition and different things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Thank you.
Man. Good luck. Can't wait to hear the podcast.
Good to see you, Max. Great questions. Julian, I think Julian needs to come back. He has a follow-up question.
Cool.
Get you back in the mix.
Sorry, I'm warmed up now, guys.
Cool.
I've got kind of in the weeds question on this one, but okay. So we work with clients that sell like $100,000 and upward products, all manufacturing, all custom engineered. There's a lot of consultation and education involved in those deals.
Yep.
It take a very long time. So a hypothesis that I have that I'm not able to prove at this point is when there's a lot of education and consultation involved in the service, the content mix, if you want to call it that, for paid social distribution should lean more heavily towards education and consultation. Just curious to hear your take on that.
I think that
versus, you know, for example, like driving them to a case study or a product page, et cetera, the bottom of the funnel.
I do think that there's actually a place for both running in tandem here. Like, that's what I would do. It's not like, I personally don't see it as too much different than selling software to selling complex software that requires 7 stakeholders and a long implementation, and maybe like a migration of data and a different custom integration. Like, that's what happens when you sell enterprise SaaS too. And so I don't see them as that much different. I just think that the manufacturers of those types of products refuse to admit that, because they choose to do all of the consultation at the sales level as opposed to the marketing level, which is where their comfort zone is. And so, like, how could you put together a product builder on your website? It would cannibalize your existing sales channel or your distribution or different things like that. And so companies, especially in this industry, I have conversations. I do not work with them, but we do. I do have a lot of conversations with them just to learn, because I spent a lot of time in those different industries earlier in my career. And those companies are 100% trapped based on their distribution model. And until you fix your distribution model, you are a slave to your distributors. And so I've watched companies that go from, 3 or 4 exclusive distributors throughout the United States, where the distributor takes 30 points and doesn't do a lot of work. And it's really hard to take that over and build your own field sales and service organization, but you recoup the 30% margin. You have all the data, you control your destiny, you control your customer experience. It's much better to scale. That's my 2 cents. And then how would you lean to the content? I'm not sure that the consultation, service, education versus promotional, I actually agree that I think that there are both. I think on organic, you lean more consultative, and on paid, you lean more promotional.
Right. Yeah, it's a scale or spectrum. Cool. Thank you.
So, hope that helps. I kind of
It does. Thank you.
kind of attack the distribution model, but in like I'll talk about this for a minute. Like this type of stuff is really interesting, and I was actually interviewing someone today, and I was like, I love marketing for B2B because all I need to do is just go look at what's already happened in B2C and then just move it here, because no B2B marketer will look and see it, but everything has already happened. And so if you take that same mindset and you look at companies that manufacture products and sell them through distribution, and you just look at what's happening in the channel conflict of B2C right now, where all of these companies are trying to go direct to consumer while they're also selling through retailers, while the retailers try to private label and compete with the brands that they sell, and all of these different things happening, the exact same thing is going to happen in B2B. If you think that you're selling a blood pressure cuff to a hospital through Owens and Minor right now, and they're doing a ton of volume, and you don't think that they're already working on private labeling a blood pressure cuff and cutting you out, like distributors that are not doing that are not smart. Distributors will start to compete with the manufacturers that they distribute for right now. It's just a matter of time. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out, and I'm super interested in pulling this clip back in 7 years and looking at what I just said, because that will 100% happen.
Predicting the future on Demand Gen Live.
It's not the future though; it's already happened. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. We got through all our questions. I don't know if anyone has any up, or if you have any good closing thoughts.
This was great. Full AMA today, which was cool. We jumped right into it. Maybe we'll we'll see who we got on, but Paul, if you're still here, you must have liked it. But like, do you think that we should keep thumbs up for like more like straight question answer, or thumbs down for more of like free form stuff? Come on, people, help me out. We got thumbs up for Q&A. Okay, perfect. So moving forward, we'll start to get right into it and move away from my long monologues at the beginning, but I'll try and throw one in to keep it interesting every once in a while.
People like your rants. We can sprinkle them in.
Cool. So I hope it was helpful, everyone. Again, appreciate every Tuesday. Today was, I think, episode 36 or 37. So we're going to try and make it one full year, which will essentially be the anniversary of when the country shut down because of COVID. So it'll be cool to look back in a year and see all of the progress that we've made and all the stuff that you all can reflect and look at all the things that you've learned, which will be cool. And I know it hasn't been like the greatest year, but hopefully we have some silver linings that we can look on. So looking forward to that. Next week we will be back at 7:30 for that, and so I'll be here, and then the next one I'll be at a surprise location, so we can stay tuned for that. All right, everyone, hope you have a great rest of your week. Good to see you. Hope to see you back again soon.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.